October 9, 1957. The Red Rooster Club, Harlem. J. Edgar Hoover stepped out of a black Cadillac with 6 FBI agents, a federal warrant in his hand, and the full weight of the United States government behind him. He was there to arrest the most powerful black gangster in America, Bumpy Johnson. But when Hoover walked out of that club 90 minutes later, he didn't have Bumpy in handcuffs. He had a handshake, a secret deal, and the keys to destroying the Italian Mafia. And what happened in that smoke-filled room would stay buried for decades, because neither man could afford to let the truth come out. October 1957. America was living in the golden age of denial. Elvis was on the radio, Eisenhower was in the White House, and the FBI, led by J. Edgar Hoover, publicly maintained that organized crime didn't exist in America. Hoover had spent years dismissing the idea of a national crime syndicate. He called it media hysteria, tabloid nonsense, conspiracy theories from paranoid senators. But on November 14, 1957, everything changed. A small-town police sergeant in Apalachin, New York, noticed an unusual number of expensive cars with out-of-state plates gathering at a rural estate. He called for backup. What they found was the largest gathering of mafia bosses in American history. Vito Genovese, Carlo Gambino, Joe Bonanno, Santo Trafficante. Over 60 mob leaders from across the country, all in one place. The police raided the meeting. Mobsters scattered into the woods in their $500 suits. Some were arrested. Others escaped. But the damage was done.
Because you came to my club, in my neighborhood, with a warrant you know won't stick. I've got 6 lawyers who'll have me out before lunch. You didn't come here to arrest me, Edgar. You came here because you need me. The silence that followed was razor-sharp. Hoover could feel the eyes of the entire club on him. He could hear the story already spreading through the streets. The FBI director came to Harlem and got played. He sat down. Bumpy poured him a glass of cognac from the bottle on the table. Hoover didn't touch it. Let's say, hypothetically, I was interested in what you have to say. What exactly do you think you have that the Federal Bureau of Investigation needs? Bumpy reached into his jacket. Every agent by the door tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. But Bumpy just pulled out a folded piece of paper and slid it across the table. Hoover unfolded it. His expression didn't change, but his fingers went still. It was a list. Names, dates, locations. Carlo Gambino's meeting with union officials in New Jersey. Vito Genovese's heroin shipment routes through Canada. Santo Trafficante's connections to Havana casinos. Joe Bonanno's real estate purchases in Arizona. And at the bottom, a single line. This is page 1 of 47. Where did you get this? Bumpy leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I've been doing business with these families for 25 years. I sit at their tables, I hear their plans, I see their operations. They trust me because I'm not Italian, which means I'm not a threat. I'm not trying to take their territories. I'm not trying to move up their ranks. I'm just Bumpy from Harlem, the black guy who keeps his mouth shut and his hands clean. He tapped the paper. But I don't keep my hands clean, Edgar. I keep records, I keep photographs, I keep receipts. I've got a storage unit in the Bronx with enough evidence to put 40 made men away for life. Bank statements, wire transfer logs, copies of ledgers, names of corrupt cops, judges, union bosses, politicians. Everything you need to dismantle the 5 families from the inside. Hoover stared at the paper, then at Bumpy. Why would you give this to me? You're in business with them. Bumpy picked up his cigar, took a long drag, let the smoke curl toward the ceiling. Because the world is changing. The Italians are getting greedy. They want Harlem. They want the numbers racket. They want everything. And sooner or later, they're going to try to take it. When that happens, I need to make sure the FBI isn't helping them. He pointed at Hoover. You've spent 30 years pretending the mob doesn't exist, because going after them was too hard, too messy, too political. But now, after Apalachin, you don't have a choice. Congress is breathing down your neck. The press is calling you incompetent. You need a win, and you need it fast. I'm offering you the biggest win of your career. Hoover folded the paper carefully, set it on the table. And what do you want in return? Immunity. Full immunity as a federal informant. You don't arrest me, you don't investigate me, you don't touch my operations in Harlem. I keep running my business, and in exchange, I feed you everything you need to take down the mob. Hoover shook his head. I can't give you a free pass to break the law. Bumpy laughed, a short, bitter sound. You already do. Half the informants on your payroll are criminals. You just don't call them that. You call them assets, cooperating witnesses, confidential sources. I'm offering to be your best source, the one who delivers the mafia on a silver platter. Hoover was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice measured, careful. If I were to hypothetically agree to something like this, I would need proof that your information is reliable. I need results, not promises. Bumpy reached under the table and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Inside were photographs. Hoover spread them out on the table. Carlo Gambino shaking hands with a city councilman. Vito Genovese standing outside a warehouse in Brooklyn. Santo Trafficante boarding a plane to Miami with 3 suitcases. Every photo was dated, time-stamped, location-stamped. Professional surveillance work, FBI-level quality. Bumpy leaned back. I've had people watching them for years. You want more? I'll give you wiretap locations. I'll give you meeting schedules. I'll give you the names of their accountants, their lawyers, their mistresses. I'll give you everything. But we do this my way. I'm not testifying in court. I'm not wearing a wire. I'm not putting my name on any official documents. You use the information however you want, but my name stays out of it, forever. Hoover looked at the photographs, at the list, at the man sitting across from him. He was calculating risks, weighing options, thinking 10 moves ahead the way he always did. Finally, he spoke. If I agreed to this, and I'm not saying I am, but if I did, there would be conditions. You give me accurate information, no lies, no games.
If you burn me, the deal is off, and I'll bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. Bumpy nodded. Fair. You stay out of federal business. You don't expand your operations. You don't get involved in drugs, weapons, or anything that crosses state lines. You keep it local, you keep it small, and you stay invisible. Bumpy's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded again. Anything else? One more thing. If I ever need you to do something, provide access, set up a meeting, deliver a message, you do it, no questions asked. Bumpy studied Hoover for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. We have a deal. Hoover looked at the hand like it was a snake. Then slowly, carefully, he shook it. One firm grip. Professional. Cold. He stood up, picked up the photographs in the list, and tucked them inside his jacket. This conversation never happened. Bumpy smiled. What conversation? Hoover turned and walked toward the door. His agents fell in behind him. The club was still silent. Every person frozen, watching. Just before Hoover reached the exit, Bumpy called out, Edgar. Hoover stopped, didn't turn around. Welcome to Harlem. What happened next became one of the FBI's greatest success stories and one of organized crime's worst nightmares. Between 1957 and 1968, the FBI launched an unprecedented crackdown on the Italian Mafia. Operation names like Top Hoodlum Program and La Cosa Nostra Initiative made headlines. Arrests skyrocketed, wiretaps multiplied, mob bosses started falling like dominoes. Vito Genovese was arrested in 1959 on narcotics charges, died in prison. Carlo Gambino survived, but his organization was constantly under surveillance. Joe Bonanno was forced into hiding, then exile. The 5 families never recovered their pre-Apalachin power. And the FBI's source for all of it? Confidential informant 4867. No name, no face, just a file number buried in classified documents. Bumpy kept his end of the bargain. Every month, a courier delivered a sealed envelope to a P.O. box in Lower Manhattan. Inside were reports, photographs, meeting notes, financial records. The intelligence was always accurate, always timely, always devastating. Hoover kept his end too. Bumpy was never arrested during those 11 years, never investigated, never raided. The NYPD tried a few times, but federal pressure always made the charges disappear. Bumpy ran Harlem untouched, protected by the one man who'd sworn to destroy organized crime. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. In 1968, Bumpy Johnson died of a heart attack. He was 62 years old. The official cause of death was congestive heart failure, but people close to him said he'd been stressed for months, paranoid, looking over his shoulder. The mob had started to suspect there was a leak. They didn't know who, but they knew someone was talking. 3 days after Bumpy's funeral, a file was removed from FBI headquarters, classified, eyes only. It was never seen again. J. Edgar Hoover died 4 years later in 1972. Among his personal effects, agents found a locked safe in his bedroom. Inside were files on politicians, activists, celebrities, blackmail material he'd collected over decades. And at the very bottom, underneath everything else, was a single photograph. Bumpy Johnson sitting in the Red Rooster, cigar in hand, looking directly at the camera. On the back, in Hoover's handwriting, were 4 words: the smartest criminal I knew. That meeting in October 1957 changed everything. It proved that power isn't always about who has the biggest gun or the most men. Sometimes it's about who has the most valuable information and the guts to use it as leverage. Bumpy didn't fight the FBI. He didn't run. He made them need him more than they wanted to arrest him.
And in doing so, he turned the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world into his personal protection service. If this story of intelligence, strategy, and the deal that took down the mob inspired you, smash that subscribe button and hit the like. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have made the same deal in Bumpy's position? Keep fighting for your crown, and I'll see you in the next one.